King Robert Baratheon was dead. The wine, the boar, the blood, it was all behind them now, and in the chill silence of the Red Keep, Ned Stark stood alone, clutching the dying king's will in his hand, the ink barely dry. It named him Protector of the Realm, nothing more. But what was written didn't matter anymore, because truth burned in his bones. Joffrey Baratheon was not Robert's son. He was a Lannister bastard, born of incest between Cersei and Jaime. That truth, that poisoned truth, could tear the realm apart. And if Cersei crowned her son, the realm would burn. Ned had tried to be honorable. He had warned her, quietly. He had given her a chance to flee with her children. She smiled, thanked him, and did nothing. And then Robert died. Now the throne sat empty. The council chamber buzzed like a nest of hornets, every man whispering alliances, every eye watching him. Littlefinger leaned against a pillar, smirking, like he already knew the end of this game. Varys watched in silence, calculating. Renly paced, always in motion, his hand near his sword. "We must name Joffrey king at once," Grand Maester Pycelle said with the heavy certainty of someone who served power, not truth. Ned stood slowly. His voice was calm but cold as winter air. "Joffrey is not the king." Silence dropped like a blade. "He is not Robert's son," Ned said, "and I will not see a false king crowned." Cersei had planned everything. She had the city watch in her pocket. Jaime stood guard over the throne. The Lannisters were ready, but Ned had been ready too. Earlier that morning, before the council met, Ned had met secretly with Commander Janos Slynt. He handed him a scroll and a bag heavy with gold. "Your loyalty is to the realm," Ned said, "not to a queen who would lie and murder to see her bastard crowned." Slynt took the gold. Now in the council chamber, chaos stirred. "You dare accuse the queen of such filth?" Pycelle shouted. "She dares to sit her bastard son on a throne built on the bones of kings," Ned said. Renly stepped forward, his voice low. "You'll start a war." "There's already a war," Ned said. "It's just wearing golden lions instead of banners." Cersei entered then, dressed in mourning black, her golden hair like a crown of fire. Behind her, Ser Jaime followed, with slow, deliberate steps, and at her side Joffrey, smiling, already smug in victory. Ned looked at them and made his choice. He nodded once to Janos Slynt, who stood beside the door. The gold had worked. The city watch stormed into the chamber. Jaime drew his sword, but a dozen blades rose against him. He was taken, screaming curses, his sword clattering to the floor. Cersei shouted, pulling Joffrey behind her, but she was not queen anymore. Ned stepped forward, placing the hilt of ice, the great sword of House Stark, on the table before him. He looked at the lords assembled, his voice unwavering. "By the king's will, and for the safety of the realm, I assume the role of regent and protector of the throne, until the true heir, Stannis Baratheon, may arrive to take his place." He could have stopped there. That had been the plan, but then Renly laughed, soft and bitter. "Stannis, that cold man will never unite the realm. No one loves him." Littlefinger spoke next, with a voice that felt like a dagger sliding between the ribs. "The people want a king they trust, a king they respect, someone who already has power, already has soldiers, already has the North." Eyes turned back to Ned. "No," Ned said quietly. "I serve the throne. I do not sit on it." "But," Varys tilted his head, "and if the realm needs you to, will you abandon it to wolves and lions?" A pause, a deep, horrible silence, and then Ned Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, spoke the words that would change Westeros forever. "Then I will sit the throne until the realm is safe." The words felt foreign on his tongue, treasonous, heavy. But when he walked into the throne room later that day and sat upon the Iron Throne, a cold settled in his chest. The crown felt too heavy, the sword at his side too sharp, and in the shadows Cersei watched him with murder in her eyes. Word travelled fast. By the time the moon rose over King's Landing, whispers were already spreading like wildfire. Ned Stark has taken the throne. Some called it noble, some called it treason, others called it war. In the Red Keep, Ned sat in the small council chamber, now colder, emptier than before. Littlefinger was gone, vanished without a word. Varys remained, quiet and unreadable. Renly had left in a fury, saying he would not serve a northern wolf in lion's den robes. Pycelle, though present, offered nothing but bitter glances and muttered prayers. Only Sir Barristan Selmy stood by Ned's side, silent but loyal. A knight who served the realm, not crowns. "Have you sent word to Stannis?" Ned asked. Varys gave a slow nod. "Yes, your grace, though I doubt he will be pleased." "I'm not his king," Ned said. "I only keep the realm together until he claims what's his." But even as he said it, a gnawing doubt crept in. Would Stannis march peacefully into the capital, or come with fire and steel? That night, Sansa came to him, eyes swollen from crying. "Why did you arrest the Queen, father? Why is Joffrey not king?" Ned pulled her close, but the truth only made her tremble more. "Because it was all a lie, sweetling. Joffrey is not Robert's son. I could not let him take the throne." "But I loved him," she whispered. He said nothing. It was one of the many things he could no longer fix. Down in the dungeons, Cersei Lannister sat in her cell of stone. In silence, her hands were bound, her dress dirtied from the scuffle, but her eyes were still flames. When Ned visited her, she didn't rise. "You've made a mistake," she said. "I've done what was necessary." Cersei laughed, bitter and low. "You think wearing a crown will keep your daughters safe? You don't know what you've started, Stark. My father will come for me, and he won't come alone." Ned said nothing. He knew the name Tywin Lannister still made grown men pale. And Tywin would not tolerate his daughter in chains, his son in irons, and his grandson declared a bastard. Not for long, but Ned had the city watch. He had Winterfell. He had honor. He thought it would be enough. In the north, ravens arrived in Winterfell, bringing news faster than any soldier could ride. Robb Stark read the letter 3 times, then read it aloud to Catelyn. "By duty to the realm and by the late king's command, I have assumed the regency and protection of the throne. Until Stannis Baratheon claims his birthright, I will serve as acting king. The Lannisters have been arrested. War is not my will, but I will not surrender to fear." Catelyn looked away. This is not like Ned. He would never seize power." "He didn't," Robb said. "He was forced." But Catelyn shook her head. "Power changes men, Robb. Even your father." Still, Robb ordered the bannermen to gather. He would not let his father face a war alone. Back in King's Landing, chaos grew in the streets. Some celebrated the fall of the Lannisters, calling it justice. Others feared retribution. Gold cloaks patrolled with heavier hands, nervous at every shout or spark. Ned spent his days buried in scrolls and treaties. He tried to rule with justice. He freed the small folk from unjust taxes. He ordered fair trials. He rebuilt the city watch with honest men. But none of it changed the one simple fact. He had taken the throne, even if it was for peace. Many saw it as theft. Then came the raven from Dragonstone. It bore the seal of House Baratheon. Black Stag. Unread, Ned read the letter in silence. "You sit upon a throne that is mine by right. You claim to act for the realm, yet you defy the very laws you once claimed to honor. Step down, or I will come with fire, sword, and justice." Signed, Stannis Baratheon, Lord of Dragonstone, King of the 7 Kingdoms. Ned folded the letter and closed his eyes. "Send reply," he told the scribe. "Tell him I do not want the throne. I only guard it. He may take it when he arrives, if he comes in peace." But even as he spoke those words, he felt the storm gathering beyond the horizon, and deep within the shadows of King's Landing, men in gold cloaks began to whisper of disloyalty. The lion may have been caged, but the lion's gold still flowed, and somewhere in the Reach Renly Baratheon was gathering swords, 3 kings, 1 throne, and a Stark wearing a crown made of duty, not desire. Not desire. Ned Stark hadn't slept in 3 days. The Iron Throne Room, once a place he had avoided even looking at for more than a few seconds, had become his prison. Each hour brought more ravens, more lords with demands, more merchants with bribes. His armor collected dust while parchment cut deeper than any blade ever could, and the worst of it, his own men had started to doubt him. Sir Barristan Selmy still stood by him, but his silence had grown longer. Lord Varys slithered in and out, always with a whisper, but never a straight answer. And the gold cloaks. They had taken Ned's coin, but not his heart. Petyr Baelish was gone, fled the capital the night Ned took the throne. Word was he'd retreated to the Vale, whispering poison into Lady Lysa's ear. If Littlefinger was quiet, it meant he was already preparing chaos. But the real threat was Stannis. Stannis Baratheon had not come in peace. His ships had left Dragonstone. His bannermen had been called. The Stormlands began to burn with banners and blades, and the letters came by raven-like hammer blows. He stole your brother's throne. A wolf rules the capital now. Ned Stark betrayed the realm. One by one, minor houses began declaring for Stannis, and then came the next shock. Ravens arrived from Highgarden. Renly Baratheon had declared himself king. With the support of House Tyrell, with their endless food, gold and knights, Renly had crowned himself and marched with 50,000 men. Ned's fist clenched the parchment until it tore. 2 Baratheons, 1 Stark, 3 men claiming to rule the realm, and winter was still coming. Sansa cried again that morning. Her handmaid told Ned she'd been writing letters. Too many. To whom? No one knew. He confronted her gently, hoping to reason with her. "Father, he's still my prince," she said. "You can't keep me locked away forever." "Sansa," Ned said, "Joffrey was never a prince, not truly. But he loved me, he said so, and I love him." Ned's voice sharpened for the first time. "You love the boy who ordered my arrest." She flinched. He regretted the tone, but not the words. "That family, they would have seen me executed. They tried to take the throne through lies. You are safer here." But Sansa looked away, eyes cold. Safer? Or imprisoned? He didn't have an answer. That evening, a scream echoed through the Red Keep. Cersei Lannister had escaped her cell. Her guards, 2 of them, were found dead. Throats cut. One had been bribed, the other poisoned. No one knew how she slipped past the dungeons, but she was gone. Jaime, too. Panic swept the castle like a firestorm. Barristan cursed under his breath. "She'll run to her father, to Casterly Rock," Varys whispered, "or to gather an army in the west." Either way, it was a disaster. Ned gave the order. "Seal the gates. Double the guards. No one enters or leaves without his word." But he knew it was too late. Tywin Lannister would come, not with parchment, with steel. In Winterfell, Robb sat on the edge of his father's chair. He was 17, and suddenly the head of the Stark household in the north. When the Raven arrived about Cersei's escape and Renly's march, Robb stood before his bannermen with a fire that reminded many of Ned in his youth. "We march south," he said. "My father will not face 3 kings alone." The banners were called Umber, Manderley, Karstark. The north began to move, but Catelyn Stark remained still, her eyes haunted. "This isn't war yet," she said. "It's still a game, but if Tywin joins the board, the game ends in blood." In King's Landing, Ned received the final blow that night. A raven. No sigil, no name, just a short message. "The Queen was never your prisoner. She only played the part. Your daughter gave her the keys. Your own blood betrayed you." Ned read the note 3 times before the words sank in. He called for Sansa. She came, pale, wringing her hands. "Did you write to Joffrey?" he asked. She hesitated. "Did you help the Queen escape?" Silence. Then a whisper. "I didn't mean to. I wanted him to forgive me. The air left the room. He wanted to shout. He wanted to cry. Instead, he simply sat down, his voice low. "You've doomed thousands." And Sansa ran from the room, sobbing. Outside the walls, war was closing. Stannis sailed up the narrow sea. Renly marched from the Reach. The Lannisters began to gather in the west. And in the middle of it all, Ned Stark, the man who never wanted a throne, found himself sitting on a blade edge. He had traded honor for duty. Now he wondered if he had any of either left. The banners were flying from every direction now. House Tyrell's golden roses marched from the Reach behind Renly's smiling face. Their tents stretched across the King's Road for miles, bright and full of music, as if war was just another summer tourney. But behind the silken smiles was steel and ambition. Renly came not to bargain, but to wear the crown he believed should be his. From the east, Stannis Baratheon's fleet began surrounding Blackwater Bay. His ships were lean and black, built for war, with flaming stags on their sails and grim-faced men aboard. They made no noise, no boasts, no banners. They came like the tide, steady, patient, and inevitable, and in the Red Keep, Ned Stark stood between both storms, knowing there would be no peace. Not now, not after what he had done. The first message came from Renly. "Surrender the throne, step aside, and I will allow you and your family safe return to Winterfell. Refuse, and I will take the city. There will be no second offer." The second from Stannis, "You have one chance to yield. Surrender King's Landing to its rightful heir. If you do, I will spare your family. If not, you will hang beside the Lannisters." Ned read both scrolls in silence, the fire crackling beside him. He said nothing for a long time, then he ordered them both burned. He called his council together the next morning. Ser Barristan stood tall but tired. "We don't have enough men to hold the city," he said. "We can delay them, yes, but not defeat them both." Varys tilted his head. "Perhaps we let them fight each other first. Open the gates for neither. Let the wolves eat the wolves." But Ned shook his head. "Too many innocents. The city will burn." He looked to the North Wall map. The Riverlands were in chaos. The Vale had sealed its borders under Lady Lysa's madness. No help would come from there. And the Lannisters, silent, watching, gathering strength. He had no allies left, no options, except one. That night he stood before the Iron Throne once more, but this time he didn't sit. Instead, he summoned Grand Maester Pycelle, Ser Barristan, and Varys to witness. "I will not be the man who destroys the realm in his own name," Ned said. "Tomorrow we send ravens to both Baratheon brothers. I will step down, let them come and claim the throne. I will not resist either, but they must not sack this city. The people have suffered enough." Ser Barristan's jaw clenched. "Stannis will not be merciful." "I know," Ned said. "And Renly will not be just," Varys added. "I know that too. But what of your house?" Pycelle asked, finally speaking. "Your legacy?" Ned turned away. "I never wanted legacy, just peace." But peace would not come. That same night, before the ravens could fly, fire broke out in the eastern docks. Stannis had begun his assault without waiting. His ships shelled the coast. His men began rowing toward the city's edge under cover of darkness. Flaming arrows lit the sky. Bells rang across the city. Screams echoed through the streets. The small folk rushed toward the gates, panicked. The city watch held them back with clubs and steel, and then came the sound of horns from the west. Renly had arrived. He had chosen his moment well. As Stannis began his siege from the east, Renly's cavalry struck from the King's Road, crashing against the outer gates like a golden storm. 2 brothers, 2 armies, and in the middle, a Stark who no longer had control of either. In the Red Keep, Sansa clung to her sister Arya as soldiers rushed through the halls. Arya had stolen a dagger from the kitchens. She held it tightly. She was only a child, but her eyes were no longer innocent. Maester Luwin begged them to hide in the crypts below the keep. But Sansa refused to leave her father. Arya didn't argue. "Then I'll protect you," Sansa laughed bitterly. You, with that? Arya held up the knife. I only need one shot. Back in the throne room, Ned stood with Ser Barristan as firelight flashed through the stained glass windows. A squire rushed in. They've breached the eastern wall. Stannis's men are inside the docks. Another entered moments later. Renly's forces have taken the Gate of the Gods. Hold your ground, Ned told them, but Ser Barristan turned to him, his face pale. You must flee, the old knight said. This city is lost. I will not abandon it, Ned said. Then you will die here. Ned drew his sword. Then, I will die on my feet. As the throne room doors thundered from distant fighting and the screams of battle drew closer, Ned Stark looked once more upon the Iron Throne. He had taken it for peace, and now the city burned. Because of him, because of him. The city was on fire. From the towers of the Red Keep to the smoky ruins of the docks, flames devoured stone and screams filled the air. Stannis Baratheon's troops had broken through the eastern defences. His knights, grim men from the Stormlands, and Dragonstone, fought without mercy, cutting down guards and small folk alike. They moved like a blade through flesh, precise, unstoppable. But from the west, golden banners swarmed like a storm. Renly Baratheon's army was bigger, brighter, louder. The Reach poured in behind him. House Tyrell's cavalry in green and gold. House Florent, House Rowan, even knights from the Arbor. Thousands marched behind a smiling king. They didn't want justice, they wanted glory, and caught between those two waves of fire, Ned Stark stood in the throne room of the Red Keep, his back to the Iron Throne, sword drawn, waiting for death or deliverance. The first doors to fall were those of the outer hall. Stannis's men broke through first. Smoke billowed in with them, choking the air. Ser Barristan rushed to meet them, sword gleaming like winter sun, cutting down the first three before they passed the threshold. Ned shouted for the guards to hold the line. We keep them off the throne. But it was no longer about the throne. It was about survival. A blast of horns followed, Renly's signal. His cavalry had reached the city gates. The fighting spread into the streets like disease. Gold cloaks turned on one another, some siding with Ned, others pledging loyalty to whichever Baratheon they thought would win. Blood ran through the alleys. No one was safe. Even the Sept of Baelor caught fire. The gods themselves burned. In the chaos, Arya and Sansa had become separated. Sansa had run after hearing rumors that Joffrey had returned, sneaking into the city with Lannister men. Arya chased. After her, blade in hand, through corridors slick with blood and broken stone. She didn't find her sister. She found Sir Ilyn Payne. The royal headsman, silent as always, stood with sword in hand and red mist on his face. He looked at Arya, and smiled. She ran, faster than she'd ever run before. In the throne room, Ned fought beside Barristan until the old knight was stabbed through the ribs. He didn't fall immediately. He simply knelt, pressing his back to the throne, breathing heavily as blood soaked through his white cloak. Go, Barristan said, voice hoarse. You must go now, your grace. But Ned didn't move. He couldn't, not yet. More soldiers burst in, this time in green. Tyrell knights, Renly's men. They clashed with Stannis's forces in the throne room itself, hacking and cutting and dying at each other's feet. A Tyrell bannerman was run through and fell across the Iron Throne, his blood pooling in the seat's jagged edges. That's when Ned saw it. The throne was no longer a symbol. It was a grave. He dropped his sword. Renly arrived in the middle of the chaos, flanked by Loras Tyrell and his personal guard. His golden armor gleamed, untouched by ash or blood. He looked around the throne room, at the bodies, the smoke, the dead, and then at Ned. You've made a mess of things, Lord Stark. Ned stood still. This isn't my throne. No, Renly said, stepping forward, but it could have been. Behind him, more of Renly's men filled the room. They took control. Stannis's soldiers, outnumbered, fell back, dragging wounded with them, their siege broken not by Ned's forces, but by their younger brother's ambition. Renly turned back to Ned. Kneel, he said. Bend the knee, and this ends. You live, your daughters live, and we restore order." Ned looked at the blood pooling at his feet, looked at the Iron Throne, thought of Catelyn, of Robb marching south, of Arya and Sansa somewhere in this burning city, and he did something know. Unexpected, he fell to his knees, but not in surrender. He collapsed from exhaustion, from blood loss, from the weight of everything he had tried to carry. The world tilted sideways and then went black. When Ned awoke, he was in a cell, dark, cold, familiar, a place he had once sent others to rot. Now it was his turn. Outside, the city was quiet. The battle was over. Renly sat the throne. Stannis had retreated. The lions still roared in the west. And the wolf was caged. The cell was cold, but it wasn't the cold of Winterfell. It was damp and slow, like rot, like the air had forgotten how to move. Ned lay on the stone floor, one leg stiff with fever, his ribs aching from bruises he didn't remember getting. Somewhere water dripped, a cruel reminder that time hadn't stopped even if everything else had. Footsteps echoed, not rushed, not armored. Measured, the cell door creaked open, and in stepped Varys, robed as always, his face calm. Ned didn't look up. "So, I lost." Varys gave a thin smile. "You never wanted to win." "I didn't want to bleed half the realm either." Varys approached, then crouched beside him. "Renly has taken the throne. He named himself King of the Seven Kingdoms, with the blessing of the Reach and the silence of the Stormlands. He sits now where you once stood, but he has not yet decided what to do with you." Ned closed his eyes. "I don't care what he does to me," he muttered. "But my daughter's alive," Varys said. "For now. Arya vanished during the battle. No one knows where she is. Some say she fled the city. Others believe she's dead." Ned's throat closed. He didn't have the strength to speak. "And Sansa?" he finally asked. Varys sighed. "She's still in the Red Keep. She refuses to eat. She thinks Joffrey will come for her." "He won't," Ned said, almost spitting. "The lion cub has no claws left." "Don't be so sure," Varys whispered. "Cersei lives. She escaped with Jaime. They're rallying Lannister banners in the west, and Tywin Lannister has not moved yet." There was a long silence before Varys stood. "You are still alive because Renly hasn't decided whether your death helps him or makes him a martyr." "Let him kill me," Ned said flatly. Varys raised an eyebrow. "You'd rather die and leave your children hunted?" "I'd rather die than kneel again." But even as he said it, he didn't sound sure anymore. Above, in the court of King's Landing, the tone had shifted. Renly Baratheon ruled now, but he ruled with mirrors and roses. Loras Tyrell stood at his side. The court was filled with laughter, music and feasts. Lords lined up to kiss the new king's ring, and with the Reach behind him, Renly didn't just wear the crown, he performed it, but trouble brewed beneath the silk. Stannis had retreated, yes, but not surrendered. He was gathering ships at Storm's End, and he had begun speaking of a strange red priestess from the east, one who claimed the Lord of Light had chosen him as the true king. Renly scoffed at it in public, but in private he asked about wildfire. In Winterfell, Robb Stark read the letter sent from the south. It was not from his father, it was from Renly. "Your father is alive. He is imprisoned, awaiting trial. The North need not suffer if you bend the knee and swear loyalty to the crown. House Stark will be rewarded, and peace will return. But if you march further, your father's fate is no longer mine to control." Robbie stared at the parchment so long the candle burned out beside him. "What does it mean?" Bran asked, voice small. "It means they want us to kneel," Robb said. "And if we don't..." Robb looked out the window, across the cold grey fields of the north. "Then they'll make us watch father die." Catelyn Stark spoke that night, not as a mother, but as the daughter of Hoster Tully, raised in war. "Then we must not watch," she said. "We must fight." Back in the capital, Sansa was summoned to court. She was dressed in blue and silver, her hair braided like a queen's. The throne room was filled with courtiers, banners, and music. And at the end, upon the Iron Throne, sat Renly Baratheon, smiling, surrounded by knights and roses. She was brought before him, made to kneel. "Sansa Stark," Renly said, "your father is guilty of treason. By claiming power he had no right to. Yet he also helped end the Lannister threat, for which the realm is safer." He paused, as if performing for a crowd. "I offer you mercy, and your father's life, if he confesses publicly, renounces all claim to the throne, and bends the knee. He will be allowed to take the black." Sansa's eyes widened. "He'll live?" Renly smiled gently. "If he confesses, before the realm." "Before the gods," she nodded quickly. He will say anything, I promise." Renly rose, stepped down from the throne, and cupped her chin in his fingers. "And if he doesn't, then you will watch him die." 2 days later, in the courtyard of the Red Keep, a platform was raised. Guards lined the walls. Nobles filled the steps. Small folk gathered behind fences, drawn to spectacle. Ned Stark was dragged into the sunlight, pale, limping, his face hollow from days without sleep or food. Sansa stood beside the Queen's court, clutching her hands so tightly they bled. Renly stepped forward. "The man who once called himself king will now answer to the realm." Ned looked around. Smoke still lingered in the air. The Iron Throne towered in the distance, shadowed by the dying sun. And then he saw her, Sansa, eyes red, mouthing something to him. "Please." Varys stepped up behind Ned, whispered in his ear. "If you confess, you take the black, you live. You'll see your girls again, someday. If not..." Ned's mouth was dry. He looked at the crowd, looked at the sword above, the headsman standing ready. And finally, he stepped forward. "I am not the rightful king." Gasps, whispers. "I took the throne in a time of chaos. I believed it was to protect the realm. But I see now, I only brought more blood." He looked at Renly, then at the sky. "I swear, no loyalty to any crown, but I will take the black and serve the realm, far from this poisoned court." Renly raised a hand. Silence. Then applause. Then a voice from the crowd. "You may not serve the realm, Stark." It was Stannis' raven, a message delivered to Renly before the trial. One line. "If the traitor Ned Stark lives, I will burn this city to ash." Renly frowned. Sansa screamed. The headsman raised his sword, and Ned Stark finally realized even honor had no place left in Westeros. The sword came down fast, one clean stroke. No words, no hesitation, just the thud of steel and the sharp gasp of 1,000 witnesses as Eddard Stark's head fell onto the stained stones of the Red Keep courtyard. Sansa screamed, collapsing. Her voice cracked like glass. Arya, hidden among the crowd, nearly rushed forward, but the arm of a man she didn't know held her back. A black cloak, a hood, a quiet whisper in her ear. "Not now, girl, not here." She bit her lip until it bled, then turned her back on the corpse of her father and disappeared into the streets of King's Landing. Renly Baratheon stood still as stone. He hadn't given the order. But the Lannister threat had been replaced by something far more dangerous, Stannis' threat. The message had been clear. If Ned Stark lives, the city dies. So Renly let it happen. He didn't stop it, didn't speak, didn't mourn. And when it was over, he simply turned and walked back to the throne room, the crown on his head heavier than ever. That night, the city stayed silent. There were no celebrations. No songs, only whispers. The man who had taken the throne to protect the realm had been beheaded like a traitor by the very realm he had tried to save. The small folk didn't know what to believe. Some said he was a usurper. Others called him the last honest man. But one thing spread quickly across the alleys and inns of King's Landing. The North will not forgive this. They were right. Robb Stark received the Raven 2 days later. He didn't speak when he read the letter. He didn't weep. He didn't ask questions. He simply handed it to his bannerman and said, "We march to war." The Greatjon roared in agreement. The Karstarks began sharpening swords. Lady Mormont sent every fighting man and woman she had. No more diplomacy, no more ravens, just blood. Catelyn Stark sat alone in her tent that night, holding a torn piece of parchment. The last letter Ned had sent before his capture. "Tell Robb not to come south. I fear this city is already lost." He had been right. She folded the letter once more and wept quietly. In the west, at Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister read the news with a cold smile. So the wolf had been put down. Good. Let the Starks rage and burn their banners. Every war they started only weakened Renly, and Renly was just a boy playing king. Jaime was still missing. Cersei was gathering men in secret, and Tywin, he was patient. He wouldn't strike until it mattered, until both Baratheon brothers had bled themselves dry. Back in King's Landing, Sansa was kept locked in her chamber. Renly sent gifts, apologies, a lady's maid with kind words. She refused them all. She didn't speak, didn't eat, didn't sleep. She just stared at the corner of her room where her father's face would never be again. Varys visited her once, just once. He didn't speak of politics or power. He simply said, "I tried." She didn't believe him. Arya, meanwhile, fled through the Undercity disguised as a boy. The man who saved her gave no name, but he whispered like a snake and walked like a shadow. "We're going north," he told her, "but not yet. Too many eyes, too many knives." She didn't ask questions, didn't speak. She carried a blade now, and every night she whispered the same 3 names: Renly, Stannis, the headsman. On the throne, Renly grew restless. The Tyrells urged celebration, parades, a royal wedding. But the war was not over. Stannis still threatened from Storm's End, and worse, the North was rising. Robb Stark's army had crossed the neck. He wasn't coming to talk. He was coming for vengeance. And the boy who had never wanted to be king was now marching south as a wolf draped in iron and ice. In a council. "Meeting!" Renly snapped. "He was a traitor!" he shouted. "He set the throne! He defied the realm!" Loras at his side tried to calm him, but others, lords from the Reach, lesser bannermen, began to question. "Then why let him live as long as you did? Why offer mercy at all? Why let Stannis dictate your decisions?" Renly didn't answer, because he couldn't. The truth was, he'd never wanted Ned dead, but he'd wanted to be king more. In Winterfell, the ravens carried new banners, not the crowned stag, not the golden lion, not the 7-pointed star, but the dire wolf. Grey, silent, unforgiving. House Stark was done playing politics. The North was at war. And this time, they were not coming to save the realm. They were coming to break it. They called him the Young Wolf. Robb Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, was no longer just a boy. Not after his father's execution. Not after marching through the neck with an army of 20,000 Northern Hearts, all of them ready to die for justice. But justice had died the day Eddard Stark's head hit the ground in King's Landing. Now they marched for vengeance. The Riverlands opened their gates without resistance. House Tully had not forgotten who Catelyn Stark was. Lord Hoster, old and ailing, raised the trout banner beside the direwolf. Even Walder Frey, bitter and crooked, allowed the Starks passage, for now. But he wanted a price, a marriage, an oath, Robb agreed. His war needed bridges more than honor. Renly's kingdom began to fracture before a single northern blade reached his walls. Whispers of Stannis's fury haunted every corridor of the Red Keep. His Red Priestess had set fires, at sea and stars in men's eyes. They said she could birth shadows, that she had shown Stannis a vision of himself on the Iron Throne, standing over his brother's corpse. The court grew cold. Even the Tyrells, once so full of song, began to speak in cautious tones. How long? Will Stannis wait? Where will the North strike first? Is Renly truly the king? And then came the first blow. Robb took Harrenhal. The castle fell in a day. Its Lannister garrison surrendered without resistance. Many even joined the northern cause, bitter and unpaid. Robb executed those who'd tortured small folk and branded the wolf banner across the Black Towers. He didn't stay long. Harrenhal was a message. The young wolf was close. In King's Landing, Renly began sleeping in armor. He tried to send envoys, apologies, promises of mercy, but every raven he sent north returned without reply, or didn't return at all. And one night, in the quiet dark of his chambers, Sansa Stark sent him a single letter the North remembers. He burned it without reading further, but the words stayed with him. Stannis moved next. His fleet struck King's Landing from the sea, while Robb moved from the land. 2 armies, 2 wolves, 1 throne. Renly had more men, more food, more gold, but less will. The Tyrells saw the fire in Stannis and the fury in Robb, and suddenly their alliance felt far more expensive than it was worth. Loras pleaded with them to stay, but Highgarden remembered how easily kings burned. They left in the night, and Renly Baratheon woke to find half his kingdom gone. The siege came fast. Stannis struck first, burning the outer docks and slamming his siege weapons against the city's eastern walls. His soldiers fought with fanatical resolve. Some carried flames in their eyes. Some did not scream when they died. Then Robb came from the west. The gate of the gods fell before dawn, and the wolf entered the capital. The streets ran red. Not from the small folk, they were spared, protected by Robb's orders, but from the gold cloaks and the last of Renly's loyalists who refused to yield. Renly never left the throne. He waited, sword in hand, Loras Tyrell at his side, desperate and wounded. When Robb entered the throne room, he found Renly already bleeding, Loras crumpled beside him. There were no grand speeches, no trial, no crown exchange, just the look of one young man who had lost everything, and another who never wanted to gain it. Renly Baratheon died with steel in his hand and regret in his eyes. He whispered something before he fell. No one ever knew what. Robb did not take the throne. He stood before it, looked at it, then turned his back on it. He ordered the Red Keep emptied, the dead buried, the crown placed at the base of the Iron Throne, not worn, not claimed. He summoned the lords of the realm, what few remained loyal, and said the words that shattered Westeros one final time. The North is no longer part of this kingdom. We will not kneel again. We are free. House Stark marched home. No banners were raised in victory. No feasts were held. Only the bones of the fallen carried north, and the silence of a war that had taken more than it gave. Arya returned to Winterfell a year later, hardened and quiet. Sansa never left the south, her heart too broken to return. She married no one. She ruled nothing. She simply endured. Catelyn died not long after. Some say her heart gave out. Others say it had broken years before. And Robb, he ruled the North. In peace, but he never smiled again. The Iron Throne sat empty for a decade. Then it rusted, then it crumbled, and no one missed it. The end. The end.